What happened was, because I felt like I couldn't control that on the golf course, it reared its head in my personal life with just generalized anxiety, constantly questioning my physical health. I remember golf feeling so easy. I'd just show up, shoot a few scores in the mid 60s. They'd hand me a $10,000 check, and I'd go back to home, practice, and do it again. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Blaine Barber. This is a solo mission today, and this is also my second take because I did not plug the camera into external power, and it died. So I'm still figuring out this technology thing. This is my first solo podcast, and I really want to tell my golf story from beginning until now. I have talked about many pieces of it throughout the years, but mostly due to not having a platform to do it, I have not really done it in depth from beginning to end. And golf has had such a massive impact on my life, and it has been used to lead me where I am today. I am still 2 years in, adjusting to no longer being a professional golfer and waking up every day with the intent of improving and sharpening my weaknesses. And I miss it a lot, but that's not mutually exclusive to also really enjoying the place that it now holds in my life of recreation and fun with friends and my children and business. And so it's all good, but it's an adjustment. And I dreamed as a little boy to play on the PGA Tour and against the best players in the world at the highest level. And you can do that and get there and achieve those goals, and it still oftentimes feel like you failed. And so I want to explore all that and peel back the curtain a little bit to go behind the scenes into some stories I haven't shared and some wrestles and struggles that I had that I've talked about with many people, both in processing them and clearing things up in my mind, but also in trying to help younger players who have struggled with some of the same things, but maybe felt like they were alone in that. And that's often the case in life, as you have a particular problem or struggle, and it just seems like you're the only one that's wrestling with that. And if you told anybody else, you'd look like an idiot or nobody would understand. And so to do it more in this public setting and just explain some of the things I walked through as a professional and PGA Tour player that people might not know. And I hope it is helpful and just kind of humanizes the pursuit of high-level athletics, because it is amazing. It's extremely rewarding. It's fun to have tangible results. The highs don't come as often as in golf as other careers maybe, but when they do, they're great, and they're a great gift. And at the same time, it is often like running into a wall over and over and over again, and you don't know when you're going to bust that wall down. So I just want to tell my story. As early as I can remember, golf has always been a part of my life. My dad picked the game up in college recreationally. He was a great athlete as a junior and in high school, between mostly baseball and football, travel baseball, American Legion, high school ball. Had a lot of ability, was the starting quarterback for the Union County Tigers in Lake Butler, Florida. And then, as I think a lot of people do, found golf after your competitive sports career ends, because it's a great outlet to do something challenging and you can compete. The handicap system's great for that. You can a tour player can play against a 20 handicapper and you can have a game. And so my dad picked the game up and played. And then I was born in his, I guess it would have been late 20s, mid to late 20s. And so I've been around golf since I was born. When I tell people that, I was not swinging a club beautifully and on talk shows like Tiger at 18 months old, hitting shots into a net, but plastic clubs, going to the golf course, riding in the cart, eating snacks, just being a kid. The golf scene where I grew up is very nostalgic, and my parents still live at one of the clubs where I grew up learning to play the game. But the golf scene in Lake City is very, very chill. We have two, I will use the term loosely, country clubs. They had food and dining and tennis and a pool, and you could be a member, but for all intents and purposes, the golf courses were municipal courses. Short, condition was fine, a lot of sandy, yard-type grass, Centipede, St. Augustine, obviously Bermuda in the main areas, but man, I learned to chip off some gnarly lies around the greens. You could be a member, so they were labeled as semi-private, but you could, I say this when I've talked about my upbringing in golf, you literally could show up in cutoff jean shorts and a wife beater in your own 24-pack of Natty Light, and they would give you a tee time and a cart, and you could go send it and have the time of your life. So did not grow up with instruction. My dad helped me from the time I picked up a club and wanted to start playing the game. I never worked with an actual swing coach consistently until I got to college. And so it was literally just fun, figure it out. Not many professional sports people had come out of Lake City, Florida. We're a small town in north central Florida. There's not a lot of industry or things that bring people to or keep people there other than just the simplicity of life. It's a heavily trafficked area. You got I-75 and I-10 crisscross right there. So if you've ever driven to Disney World through Florida, you've gone through Lake City. But there's just not a lot there. And so golf was certainly not the most popular sport, but I was born at the end of 1989. So in the 90s, especially in my formative years when I started to actually play the game, Tiger won the Masters when I was 7. So I think 8 is when I played my first tournament. And just quick side note, I'm going to go chronologically. So it'll go faster and slower, and there'll be moments where we park the train, get off, peer into the city, come back, go down the road further. But that's my general idea here. So golf in Lake City was just super fun. Not many people at the high school played, or junior golfers. There wasn't a ton of junior golfers. Nobody played with intentionality throughout the year. It was just kind of like an activity to do in the summer or when other sports weren't going on. I played other sports growing up, tried soccer, didn't like it, was too short for basketball and too small for football, and really didn't have any interest, but loved baseball. So I played baseball like most kids do, t-ball, little league, machine pitch, kid pitch, and really liked baseball and played it at, the city rec league level until I was 12. And then 12 is kind of when baseball started conflicting with golf, and I just went the golf route. Looking back, and I tell parents this today and young kids, I think being a multi-sport athlete, even with something that is as high skill and muscle memory and mentally demanding as golf, the time it takes, like any sport if you want to play it at the highest level, a couple of just things to think on. Being a multi-sport athlete is extremely helpful at developing athletic prowess. I wish I would have played a little bit further into middle school and high school. I think it would have helped my reaction time, my problem solving skills. Golf is very slow and cerebral. You have moments of intense effort and focus followed by long periods of walking and talking and processing what just happened. And so being involved in a faster sport probably would have been beneficial, but that's my story and that's the way it worked out. But I try to encourage people, don't professionalize your children too early in a singular endeavor. And then the more things they're exposed to, I think it just overall develops the ability to be athletic. And golf, for me, especially the way my mind works, I could get very insular and technical and try to become robotic when just grabbing the club, figuring out and being athletic was probably the best thing. So that's my 2 cents on that. I think I played my first tournament when I was 8. I remember every year, beginning of June, Quail Heights Country Club, which is the primary course I grew up playing. Awesome club owned by the St. Marie family, who were French Canadians from Montreal. They opened the club in, I think, the 70s. Their son, Carl, was the head pro. I'd hang out in his office, do his junior clinics. Then as I began to improve as a junior, I would always play with Carl and his group of guys on Wednesdays. That was kind of men's day. They do the men's blitz where you have a point system, and that was the best group of players. There was usually 6 to 12 guys, 2 or 3 groups. And probably about 12 or 13 is when I would start playing with them and play the money games on Wednesdays. And that was really formative in my playing with older men and guys that were good players and could shoot in the 60s. And it exposed me to a lot more than just golf as a 12 or 13-year-old, but love the St. Marie's. They were welcoming and just provided a place for a kid with ambition to pursue the game. So every June, they would host the Junior Invitational. That's what it was called. This is 1998. Would have been the first time I played, way before the AJGA, the Florida Junior Tour, when junior golf began to accelerate with the prominence of Tiger and the PGA Tour and the professional game. And so first time I played, I at that age would have played 9 on Saturday, 9 on Sunday. I remember Matt Tribby won from Gainesville. Matt, this gets to you somewhere. I think Matt maybe lives in Denver because I saw him at the Corn Ferry event a couple times. Matt won. I think he probably shot about 80 for 2 days, give or take, 40-40, 2 9-hole scores. And I remember shooting about 100, 50-50-ish. But I believe that was my first junior tournament I ever played in. Backtracking slightly, my mom always says that when I was 7 was when I first claimed that I wanted to be a professional golfer. I don't remember that, but I certainly love the game, loved going to the course with my dad. I remember watching the PGA Tour on the tube television on Sunday afternoons after church, sitting on the couch. And so that's kind of when the ambition arose in me. And then 8 is kind of when I got hooked. So 8 through 12 is typical junior golfer if you're obsessed. Every waking moment of the day that I could be there, that I wasn't doing school or committed to something else, I wanted to be at the course. And this is just something for parents to take away too. Now that I'm a parent of 4 children, the golf course is such a great place to develop a skill, but also just character qualities and life traits. You're interacting with people that are older than you, teaches you respect, teaches you to look people in the eye, introduce yourself, shake your hand, play by the rules on the course. If you go out with them, make sure you're keeping up. You learn to deal with and interact with so many different types of people. And for the most part, it's a safe place. You can drop your kids off as long as they have access to get a hold of you, and you're surrounded by people who are paying to be a member there, and there's practice facilities, and if they get tired of doing that, there's a pool. And it's just a great place for kids to develop, and you're not confined to a team schedule, so you can do it on your own schedule. And so I was also homeschooled growing up, kindergarten through 12th grade. And so there were days, I probably didn't start doing this more till I had more ambition and drive and self-achievement sort of kind of like in my purview, but I would often be like, hey, Mom, I'm going to do Monday and Tuesday's schoolwork today, or Tuesday and Wednesday. It would often coincide with Wednesday because that was when the game with Carl and all his guys would play. And I would often do 2 days of work on Tuesday so I could go to the course all day Wednesday. And I would do that a lot. As long as I got my work done, I could go to the course and I could try to get better and go pursue this thing. I think Lake City we've had a few MLB guys. Michael Kirkman played for the Rangers when they won the World Series a little while back. And then we've had a few NFL guys that have come through Columbia High School. And so there's been some athletic success out of Lake City, but there were some people, especially growing up, that had the ambition and the drive golf-wise, but didn't quite get there. And so there was a lot of excitement to being someone that showed promise, but had no clue how low skill I was until I got into that time when I put baseball aside and started playing more junior tournaments and being exposed to people more at a statewide level and then a regional level. And that all happened kind of at 12 or 13. And so started playing the Florida Junior Tour. What a great platform and benefit the Florida Junior Tour was to me growing up. Darren Green, Jim Dimerick, Les Brown, just these people that through the Florida State Golf Association that provided an amazing junior tour that gave someone like me a place to go out and compete and learn to play the game. Because at this point, I want to play in college. I'm still not that good. I'm kind of good for Lake City, but then you kind of expand your horizons and you realize there's a lot of good players out there. This is when IMG Academy down in Bradenton, where tennis and golf were kind of focal sports, really was exploding. And so you got academy kids who are just being trained as professionals all day, basically. And I was competing against a lot of those kids. And I just continued to progress. And I vividly remember at Celebration Golf Club in Orlando in 2003 as a 13-year-old was the first time, I think it was the first time I broke par. I broke 70. I think I shot 69 or 68 that day. But I remember standing in the 16th fairway. I have not broken par in a tournament round. And then I ended up birdieing one of the last couple, and I think I shot in the 60s. And so I think it was the first sub 70 and under par round I'd ever shot in a tournament. And so that was a big deal. That was a stepping stone. And the whole time I'm doing this, you're playing against kids that are shooting 66, 66, and they win the tournament. And you're just like, man, I'm just not that good. I don't know if I can compete. I don't know if I can take my game to the level it needs to be to play with these kids who are world beaters at 13, 14 years old. And so that was that was a stepping stone. And I tell this part of the story to just highlight the fact that you just don't know what your ceiling is unless you just keep moving. Like a common thread through my golf journey, but then also in life and in anyone's journey in life, is that if you're trying to crack open a granite rock, you may hit it 999 times before the 1,000th one breaks it in half. And somebody walking by at that 1,000th strike will say, man, that guy just broke that rock in half. But it was all those moments prior that allowed that moment of breaking through to occur. Or I've heard famous bands talk about their biggest hits that they've written. And I think this is a cool anecdote to this too. I've heard them say, I can't recall a specific example, but we wrote that song in 25 minutes. And people are like, what in the world? But it was the decade prior of doing 300 shows a year on the road in dive bars and small stadiums, or not stadiums, small amphitheaters and local restaurants and weddings and whatever, that led to the 25 minutes that wrote this world-shattering global hit. And so as I was progressing in my golf, I didn't know how good I could be. I was growing up, I was competing against some of the main guys from that era in Florida. Would have been Brooks Koepka, Peter Uihlein, Bud Colley. Those were like some of my contemporaries that I played with often. And you just don't know. And so you just keep going down the path. And I remember the first event I ever won was when I was 15, Florida Junior Tour at Disney, the Palm and Magnolia courses. I think we played the Palm, which is not the one the PGA Tour used to play. But I won that event in 2005 when I was 15. And it just kind of happened out of nowhere. And it was like, oh, now I've won a tournament. I remember Brooks was there in that field. I'd played with him before there, and he had won that event. And Brooks was a great player from the time we were 13 or 14 years old. And so that was the first win I ever had as a junior golfer. It was 2005, Disney. Florida Junior Tour was probably 20 guys playing. Not a huge deal, but I picked off a W against all these peers that I'm playing against regularly. At this point, starting to get letters from colleges. I remember getting a handwritten note from a guy named Nick Kleinert at the University of Central Florida. I remember getting that. I remember opening that letter in the baseball parking lot at the Columbia County recreational baseball fields. And I was past baseball at this point, but I was there. I umpired a little bit. I would do scorekeeping up to just make some money. Or my brothers had a game and we were just there supporting them. But I remember in that parking lot getting that letter and being like, oh, this is a college golf opportunity. This is cool. And so I remember that was the first letter that I can remember getting. Nick had been at UCF for 7 or 8 years. And then in the summer of 2006 is sort of when everything changed for my golf career. I had never played, well, back up real fast. The Future Masters was a junior tournament in Dothan, Alabama that I ended up playing every year from 13 to 18. So I played it every year from 2003 to 2008. And it just felt like the biggest deal that I had played in at the time. They still run that event. Cal and Angela Turner, Kevin Klein's still the pro. Have so many dear friends in Dothan. Love going down there. Actually took my boys to the 10 and under finish this summer just to kind of expose them to this thing that I had done for so many years as a junior golfer. And my 8-year-old Ford loved it and wants to play next year. And so that is a really cool full circle moment in my golf life, but loved this tournament. And so a critical junction in my career that I can look back and see now. The first round, I was playing pretty well, and I remember making a sloppy bogey on the 17th hole, and then I think a par 9, which was my 18th hole, and that I shot over par for the day. And this was more of a regional. I mean, it's a national event, but mostly kind of people from the Southeast. But it holds a lot of weight with college recruiting. It's a great opportunity. And I remember after that first round, I'm 16 years old, summer 2006. I made a sloppy bogey coming in. I had some good opportunities. The lead was probably only at 3 or 4 under, and that made me shoot 1 over. And then we had like a 4th of July cookout right after. My family went and did that. And I remember I went back to the car and I just cried for 15 or 20 minutes. I was so devastated that I couldn't close it out and I couldn't put myself in position to play well the last 2 days. And that moment was indicative of a lot of the way that I would process highs and lows in golf throughout my whole career. But now fast forward the next day, tee off. I remember what I was wearing, which is so funny. Such a pivotal day, a big day. 3rd hole, difficult par 3, kind of the only par 3 on the course. Well, no, there's two with a lot of water, but it was a long hole, water all on the left. There's always a backup on that tee box. Like when I say backup, 40 minutes to an hour. So many groups because so many kids hit it in the water, have to drop and then play the hole. And I remember I hit it in the water. And so after what had happened the first day and then Now, 4 holes later, I've now made another mistake, and I could just see it just kind of slipping. But something turned on in me in that moment. And I was like, this was just a moment of mental clarity and a step forward in the right direction in my golf career. I was like, it's okay. Go drop this ball at the drop zone. Let's get it up and down for bogey, and let's see what happens. And I remember hitting a wedge. I was kind of safe with it because the pin was near the water. Hit it to like 20 feet and made a big curling 20-footer for bogey. And I was like, okay, that was great. And then I shot 65 that day. And then I won the Future Masters the next day. And that changed my golf life forever. And I still have the trophy in my office. I'm 35 years old. I was sick. That was 20 years ago almost. But that day really is sort of the pivot point in my competitive career where I was like, okay, I can get into hard situations and I can do this. Then 2 weeks later, I'd never played. This is where I jumped ahead earlier on accident. I'd never played the Florida State Junior Championship. They call it the Boys Junior Championship. And I signed up for it. I barely got the deadline, but I remember I was just scrolling around on the FSGA website one day, or I got an email about it or something, that I was eligible. I was exempt into it. I didn't have to qualify. Maybe because of a Florida Junior Tour win or the Future Masters or something. But I was like, sweet, I'll play this. So I signed up not knowing that it's like the state junior event every year. So I show up. Funny memory from that week. I went to the Suwannee River the day before. I think it was a Saturday, and tubed and knee boarded and boated and swam and had a blast all day Saturday. And I was very unfit and untrained at the time. I'd never stepped foot in a gym. And so I remember I woke up the next day and I could not move my arms. I was so stiff from holding the ski ropes and doing all the activities we had done. And I'm showing up to this state junior event. And I was like, oh my goodness. I remember we went to church, got in the car, drove over to Timuquana in Jacksonville. Great golf course. Love that place. And I got out of the car, didn't get much of a warm up. And I got to the first tee and I hit my first drive 70 yards OB right. And I was like, oh no, this is probably the biggest event I'm going to play to date up to this point. And I should not have gone to the river yesterday. So I remember that. Anyways, to overlook a lot of details, ended up winning that week. And so now I had won 2 major events in 2 out of 3 weeks. And it really just changed the trajectory of my career. And it gave me a lot of opportunities to start talking with Division I colleges. And that basically over the next couple of years is what led me to ultimately going to UCF with Nick. First letter I ever got. My final 4 decisions sort of came down to Auburn, Florida State, Florida, and UCF. And I felt like Nick and I just jived really well. And he really sold me on what I thought was going to provide me the best way to get to the PGA Tour, which was my ultimate ambition. And so it was difficult to say no to those other schools. I grew up wanting to play for Buddy Alexander at Florida. My parents were FSU grads, and then once Trey Jones started recruiting me, I really fell in love with their program, and I knew Brooks Koepka was going there, and they were putting together something special, and they had better facilities than UCF. Same thing with Auburn. Coach Griffin had been there for a long time. They were building a new practice facility, which is now their facility they've had for the last 20 years. And so it was difficult to end up at that decision with UCF, but that's where I ended up. And then really just had a great experience there. You show up in college and you don't know what you're going to be able to achieve, because every level you jump to, the cream is just rising to the top. And so you're just thrown back at the bottom of the barrel every time. And my first round in college ever at UCF was at the Farm in Dalton, Georgia. And I played with Billy Horschel that day, who was a senior at Florida. And I remember I shot 67 and I was leading the tournament. And I was like, this college golf thing is going to be the easiest thing ever. I'm going to be the best player in the country. And little did I know, that was just a really good day. And I played great, but was humbled that week. And really the rest of that semester, shot in the 80s. A couple times I went an entire tournament without making a birdie for 54 holes, did not qualify for a tournament, and just kind of the typical struggles of a freshman that was working hard, but you kind of have to figure your way out. And so that was the best thing for me, though, because it really, when I didn't qualify for an event, I think it was an event in California as well. So I was kind of like motivated to play it. I'd never been to California, and that was kind of one I had circled on my mental calendar for our team, and I didn't qualify, and I just worked extremely hard. None of these things are unique to me, but I would say this to any aspiring competitive golfer out there, junior, or even if you're a 7 handicap and you want to be a 2 handicap. You hear a lot of guys at clubs talk about wanting to get better and wanting to improve, but you just have to put the work in. It always kind of irritates me when professional athletes say, like, I just worked harder than anybody else. Well, really sacrificial hard work is sort of the floor to get into high-level athletics, especially at the professional level, because everybody's doing it. And so when you have the opportunity to truly do more than the people around you, college athletics in the team environment of golf, even though it's an individual sport, it was a unique way for me to just measure myself against people around me, because it's not as easy to do it with people at other schools or that live in other cities or playing other tournaments. But in college, I've got 10 to 12 guys around me that I can always measure myself against. And so I really use that to not do it instinctively against other people or hold it over them or ever promote that I was doing it. But like, if one guy was getting there 15 minutes before practice started, I'm going to get there an hour before practice starts, and I'm going to start getting to work. If workouts are at 6 a.m., I'm going to get there at 5 a.m., and I'm going to run a mile and get really sweaty and warmed up, and then go through some pliability and mobility stuff. And then when the whole team shows up at 6, I've already got a workout in, I'm warmed up, I'm ready to roll, and I'm going to crush them in the workout too. If practice ends and I haven't completed the putting drill, and I got to pull a card out and turn the lights on to be able to finish this, make 53 footers in a row before I leave, and everybody else is already gone into study hall or dinner, I'm staying and I'm going to finish it. And so those were just the kind of things. And I mean, thankfully my parents exposed me to reading good books and learning about leadership, and just, I always observed what other people were doing around me. But there was just sort of this innate thing of, if I want to be the best, I've got to do at least as much as everyone else is doing. I probably need to push that envelope a little bit further than that. And so that mentality sort of drove me all through my college career, both at UCF and at Auburn. So we had a great freshman year. When Nick took the program over at UCF, they were in the hundreds in terms of national ranking. Very small program, very few resources, not a golf school. And he was there for 8 years. And my freshman year in 2008, 2009, we finished 10th at NCAA's. Had a great chance to get to match play. That was the first year of match play at the NCAA championship for college golf. And it was a great year. So at this point, I said earlier, I'd never had a formal swing coach. My dad just helped me as we were growing up. And when I got to UCF, Nick had a great teaching background, and he was a good communicator, and I trusted him. And so I took him on as my full-time swing coach. So he was my college coach, but he also was helping me with my game and improving my swing and my fundamentals, and just saw a tremendous amount of improvement. When I first got to UCF, for all the golf nerds out there who will know what these terms mean, we didn't have TrackMan back then. That didn't come around until kind of into college. But I mean, I carried my driver as a freshman probably 250, 260 on a good hit. Couldn't hit it 50 feet off the ground. I kind of had a really leaned forward left toward the target. Spine tilt, would hit just really low, dinky, pathetic drivers. And my upperclassmen teammates would regularly remind me of that. But I fell in love with the gym. That's a funny story. I don't know if I should get into that or not, but probably gained 30 yards of carry and distance and ability to hit the ball up just in that freshman year. When I got to UCF, I weighed 147 pounds, had never stepped foot in a gym before, and then left freshman year 170 pounds, could hit it 30 yards further, and my swing was just in a much better place. Just everything had improved. So Nick did exactly what he promised he would do and really helped me in that. Meanwhile, my life outside of golf and school was wonderful. I had great friends. I had the Fitzgerald family, who I love dearly. That was kind of like a second home to me. I'd eat dinner at their house multiple nights a week. Charlie Fitzgerald III, the dad, ended up becoming my financial advisor for all of my professional golf career. Their daughter Sarah married one of my friends, Jake, and then their son Charlie Fitzgerald IV is still a close friend, was in my wedding, played college golf at Rollins. Their son Casey, still friends of mine. He's married, lives there still. Just had all this great stuff going. And I went down to work with Nick over a day or two on the way to a summer event. And he goes, "Hey, I got the job at Auburn and I want you to go with me." And honestly, I was kind of devastated because I was like, I really like it here. We got a good thing going. We had a great year last year. I don't really know that we need to do this. And so I spent all of my summer between freshman and sophomore year kind of going through the recruitment process again. And this time with my coach, who I knew and trusted and believed in, but at a different school with a different setup and different requirements and all these things. And so at the time, it was hard. It was a difficult decision to make. And I think it took me, I remember my mom and I drove to Memphis for the Southern Am that year in Memphis. And we broke the drive up, came to Auburn. Kleiner basically did an official visit with me as my coach, but new place, so I'm not really with him at that time. Went and played the tournament, came back, and then decided, yeah, I want to do this. And I didn't realize how great Auburn was at the time, just in terms of a school and a city and a place, how big the SEC was, how big football was, all these things. And so made the decision and committed to doing it. And that was life-changing. Never in a million years would have thought that I would still be living in Auburn and raising my family here now. But two funny things in that transition. The athletic director at UCF, my parents and I had a long meeting with him. Golf is like the lowest thing on the totem pole at UCF. It's a non-revenue producing sport. It's just golf at UCF. Like, we had a great year, but whatever. I told him I'm going with Nick. Nick's my guy. I came here because of Nick. I feel strongly about this. I got an opportunity to go to Auburn University, and I'm going. And he's like, well, I'm not going to release you. And if the athletic director doesn't release you, even though it was out of conference, I didn't have to redshirt because it was out of conference. But if he didn't sign a release paper, I was forced to redshirt. And so I basically told him, I was like, I'm going. It would be really kind of you if you could sign this paper and let me go freely. And he declined. And so I was not released, but I went anyways. And so I had to redshirt all of that sophomore year. And I was concerned about that a little bit competitively. I was worried that I could get rusty, not playing college golf for that year. But it worked out really well. I was able to take a full class load, which kept me ahead of the pace for graduating in 4. And I was also able to play 5 amateur events that I probably wouldn't have been able to play if I was playing college. So I played the St. Augustine Am, the Azalea Am, the Terracotta Am. I can't remember the New Year's Invitational, or maybe it was I think it was the New Year's Invitational. But I was able to play some other events that usually would have been unavailable to me if I was traveling and playing with the team. So I was still able to play some competitive golf. I think I actually won the St. Augustine Am. And so the red shirt wasn't a huge deal. It just stunk. So I was there for a whole year, meeting a new team, getting used to a new place. Same coach which was familiar, but I wasn't able to play. So I didn't play my sophomore year. So to this day, only played 3 years of my 4 in college. So only used 3 years of my eligibility, but graduated in 4. So I ended up going ahead and turning pro. So my career at Auburn was wonderful. Just it says a lot, I think, to the Auburn community and the people in the athletic department and the people who run and own the country clubs here. They're great with alumni. And I stayed here when Morgan and I got married because I felt like I could continue to improve my game and base my professional life out of here, at least at the start. And then we would decide what was best long term. At the time, we didn't know we were going to just stay here in its entirety. But had a great junior year, ended up being a second-team All-American. And a fun little side tangent there. So every summer, the Nationwide Children's Hospitals Open in Columbus, Ohio, which at the time was the Web.com Tour, would always give the 10 first-team All-Americans an exemption, which we'll get to in a little bit when I turn pro. But 2 guys declined for some reason, or they couldn't play. There was a conflict or something. And so whoever the interested parties were offered the 2 spots to me and Harris English. And I remember getting that confirmation when we were at the Southern Am at Innisbrook down in Tampa, Florida, where the Valspars played on the PGA Tour. And I remember seeing Harry on the range. It was like, hey, we got these spots in this event next week. This is pretty fun. And he's like, yeah, it's great. For me, I don't know for him, it was my first ever professional event that I was going to have played in. As an amateur, had no intention to turn pro. Was going back to Auburn. I still had some more events to play that summer. But it was a cool opportunity, especially as a second-team All-American, because usually that wasn't afforded to you. So we go up to Columbus, and I'll never forget, I was playing with Sam Saunders, who's a friend of mine. Sam retired about the same time I did, maybe a year after me, but recently. And a little older than me, so I already knew his name. You know, Arnold Palmer's grandson, had played the Bay Hill, had some success already. I got paired with Sam, and I remember I started bogey, double bogey on the Scarlet course at Ohio State. My first ever entry into professional golf as an amateur, but I was so overwhelmed. I was like, I can't play with these guys. My game's not good enough. I don't know if I stack up. And then Harris won that week as an amateur. You can look that up. 2011 Nationwide Children's Hospitals Invitational or Open. And when Harris won and I very easily missed the cut, that was a wake-up call for, okay, you're having a good career, you're making progress, but you still need to continue to improve, and you got some holes in your game that are going to keep you from going from where you are to where you want to go to play the PGA Tour. Senior year comes around and just had a great senior year. Game continued to progress. At this point, I'm dating Morgan. I'm considering exercising that last year of eligibility, but we want to get married. My game feels good and ready, and so I want to turn pro. So have a great senior year, and then I'm a first-team All-American that year. So that automatically gave me the spot back into that same event, but this time I could turn pro, and that could be my first professional start. So on July 26th, 2012, I turned professional. And people talk about the difference in playing for money or not. And something I have observed is I've watched the game over the last 10 or 15 years as both a fan and then a participant. You see a lot of the most successful people say, like, yeah, I've never done it for the money. I play for trophies and I play for the reward and the accolades, but I don't play for money. And let me tell you something. From day one, I had a very difficult time separating the result and the monetary outcome from the effort I was putting in and being present. And that started from week one. Because first and foremost in my mind, this was my job. This was my calling from the Lord. where he was going to place me for a season to provide for my family, my new family upcoming at this point. I'm engaged. We're about 6 months out from our wedding. And so I've got no money in the bank. I've got some great sponsors right out of the gate due to my success in college, which was amazing. But like, I've got to make money because this is my job now. And I don't have family money. My parents have always supported and give me everything I need, but I've got to go out and do this. And so I remember made the cut. And then on Sunday, I was middle of the pack, but teed off on 10 on Sunday. And I shot 33 on the front, my front, which was the back nine. And I remember big leaderboard on 18. I looked and I had moved up to like 13th or 10th place, something pretty high. And I immediately just started thinking about how much money that was going to be. I was like, oh my goodness, that if I play well this back nine, I could make like $10,000 or $15,000 this back nine. And then I made a few bogeys and ended up finishing tied for 33rd. I pulled it up because I couldn't remember exactly. I made $4,560, and I thought I was the richest person in the world. But a couple lessons from that day. One, being present and giving 100% effort every shot, regardless of the situation, was something I never fully mastered in my career. I got better at it. I became aware of it. I worked on it. But that was really hard for me to have that putt on the last hole and not know that it was for $100,000 or whatever. Second thing I learned is after airfare, rental car, hotel, caddy, and taxes, you make very little money in professional golf unless you're on the PGA Tour. Because that $4,560 dwindled very quickly. So I go from there and I immediately hit the mini tour circuit. At the time, you had the eGolf Tour and the NGA Hooters Tour, which were still up and thriving, and you could make $25,000-ish if you won, and then you could make a few bucks to at least travel and keep the boat afloat, depending on how you played. Now that is not the case. Now the developmental tours are the Americas Tour. You play in Canada, Latin America, some stateside, and that provides you direct entry into the Korn Ferry Tour. So that's kind of the way that works nowadays. Back then, you could go out and just kind of pay your entry fees and do the mini tour thing. So I went straight to, I believe it was Rock Hill, South Carolina. I don't know if that's right. Somebody can fact check that. And played my first NGA event. Now that I'm saying that, I feel like I played an e-golf event the week before. Either way, I immediately went out and just realized how hard it is. I mean, you guys shoot 20 plus under par. There's 150 other guys out here doing the same thing, paying $1,500 to play. You're staying in host homes or in dingy hotels, and you're just kind of like trying to keep yourself sharp and prepped for Q School, which is coming in September, October, November, December, depending on what stage you have to start at. And then we're going to get to Q School because that's something that shaped the rest of my professional life in ways that very few people know. But you're basically just prepping for that. And then this is what I was going to say. 2012 was the last year it was publicized that they were changing the format of Q School, and you could no longer go straight from Q School to the PGA Tour. So for years and years and years, the top 20 or 25, I think, from Q School went straight to the PGA Tour, and then down to a certain threshold went to the Nationwide or the Korn Ferry or the Web.com Tour. And then everybody else was just conditional. And so you pay $5,000 or $6,000. You start at whatever stage you're exempt to, either pre-qualifying, first stage, second stage, or final stage. And then you can go straight to the PGA Tour. So there's no wait. You can go from college, stay sharp in the fall, play Q School. You're at the Sony Open in Hawaii in January. So I'm prepping for that. So I go out and hit the mini tour circuit. First couple weeks were just kind of a punch to the gut. You got to shoot some low scores. These guys are really good. Everybody's kind of shooting for the same goal. And this is hard. And you're starting to live on the road more. In college, you're playing a couple of days a week, come back, settle back in, do some schoolwork, do some practice, go back out, 3 nights max. In professional golf, now I'm on the road 7 days at a time. Then from one city I'm unfamiliar with, straight to another one, switching your rental car, jumping on an airplane, meeting a new family, staying in another hotel. It's just different. And then same thing as in college. I don't know if I can do this. These guys are beating me by 15 shots at the end of the week. There's now a cut. If I don't play well, I don't get to play the final 2 days. I don't make any money. It was just different. There's always that transition every stage you get to. Third event I played was in Florence, South Carolina, at what I believe is called the Country Club of South Carolina. And I ended up winning. Andrew Loop, who ended up playing the tour with me, good friend, awesome guy, stud athlete. We battled, kind of pulled away from the field, and just had a duel that last round, and I shot 23 under and won. And I remember I made $22,000. Still have a picture with the giant check. They didn't let me keep the check because it was like a dry erase board. That was very disappointing. But remember calling my fiance Morgan at the time and saying, I won. We did it. I made some money. That gives us some buffer going into the fall as we get closer to our wedding. It was amazing. That's also about the time that my good friend William Hughes called me and said, hey, you have to pay taxes on all this money you're earning. And I was like, oh, really? I didn't know that. So William kind of saved my life from going to prison for tax evasion and ended up being my CPA for many, 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 many years. Great guy. Love you, William. And Candace. Candace is great too because she did my bookkeeping as a pro. But that was a fun little adult moment where I didn't realize that and I had to start taking the necessary steps to be a business owner. So won that event, and then the rest of the fall between there and Q School sort of died off a little bit, but there was a lot of 3-day events, which they called winter series events, and the winners would make about 10 grand. And I went out and I won 4 out of 7 I played in, I think. And I remember golf feeling so easy. I just show up, shoot a few scores in the mid 60s. They'd hand me a $10,000 check and I'd go back to home, practice and do it again. And it was just bliss. My game felt great. I was confident. It's funny, you talk to successful people in all different ventures and arenas, and they always say the journey was super fun. And then once you finally get there, it's a little bit of a like, is that it? Like, now I have to just work to keep this thing. So for me, that's playing on the PGA Tour. And I look back so fondly on the mini tour days and the grind of it and just how hard, there's so much hope, but there's so much unknown. And so all you're doing is just working and striving and dreaming, and you believe in yourself, but can't really put that belief anywhere. You just got to go out and play, and then the results come, and then it's just truly becomes this chicken or the egg thing. And so we get to Q School, and for me, I was exempt through the pre-qualifier because of some stipulation in the exemption categories. And so I get to first stage of Q School at Callaway Gardens, which is only 45 minutes from Auburn. So I was able to stay in my apartment with my roommates, Nicholas Carlson from Sweden, who was still on the team, Michael Abear, who was still on the team. And I was just living with them for the fall before I got married, and then moved in with Morgan after our wedding that December. And so 45-minute drive. I was just staying at my apartment, driving back and forth. Game feels great. And my entire golf career shifted on the 4th hole, which was my 13th hole today at Callaway Gardens Mountain Course in the front bunker. And it did multiple things that I want to dig into a little bit. But all of that is within the context of when I was 16, these pieces, this is going to seem a little bit random right now, but I'll connect it here in a little while. When I was making my final determinations for schools to go to, I sort of had this period when I was 16 and 17 where I just had some like health stuff pop up. I think the stress of trying to make a college decision before I went to UCF reared its head and ended up like, I had multiple days where I had like 120 beats per minute heart rate for like days at a time. I wasn't able to sleep. I had insomnia. I would lay in bed and then my heart rate would increase and I couldn't sleep. And then I would have like lightheadedness and just all these different things that were probably stress related, but it really sort of like planted a seed in my mind of being a hypochondriac and just being on edge. It sort of just unearthed an anxiety in me that I didn't know existed. So that kind of started at 16 or 17. And that's going to come into the story here in a little bit. But on that fourth hole, my 13th hole of the day, was when I touched a leaf in the bunker. You can look up a story about it. Dear friend of mine who's one of the lead journalists at the PGA Tour, Sean Martin, wrote an article about it. It was a big deal because I was a first-team All-American. I'd had a great fall. I was playing good golf. And also it was the last year you could go straight to the PGA Tour. So the way this whole situation played itself out basically precluded me from being on the PGA Tour until at least 2015 because I had to now wait a full year for Q school again. And then if I were to get to that Q school in 2013, I would have to play a full year on the Corn Ferry Tour, web.com tour at the time, and then get my tour card that way. So I would not technically, because of what happened with this rules situation, I was not going to be on the PGA Tour for 24 months. They still had the FedEx Cup fall, so it would have been about 20 months. So quick details, touched a leaf in the bunker. So I thought, told my playing partners and assessed myself a one-shot penalty. Got back to my apartment in Auburn that afternoon, and Michael goes, "Hey, is that a one-shot penalty or a two-shot penalty?" And my heart dropped into my stomach, and I looked up the USJ rule book, and it's a two-shot penalty. So now I played the mental gymnastics game for the next couple of days. Did I touch the leaf? Did I not touch the leaf? Because if I didn't, then I just assessed myself a shot that I didn't have to, and I signed for a higher score, which you just accept. But if it was two, I signed for a score lower than what I actually did, and I'm now disqualified. And now I've got this no status, no income. I'm getting married in 6 weeks, and my whole world is about to be flipped upside down. So I tried to just be like, okay, well, maybe you didn't touch it. Maybe you just felt something that didn't actually happen. Just get over it. Just keep playing. And I finished fourth, played great that week. I actually still, you can recall these moments on the 72nd hole, kind of a downhill straightaway par 4 at Callaway Gardens. I just hit one of the best drives of my career. I just remember I could still, like I could close my eyes and put myself in my body there and feel that like kind of hold cut down the left center, just fade right back to the middle. It's visceral. Finished fourth and breezed through. And then I drove straight to Dothan. I think my wife, Morgan, was having a bridal shower. And I remember showing up down there and everybody being so excited and proud of me and just looking forward to progressing forward to getting that PGA Tour card. And I was just in just like a daze. The next 5 days, the amount of times I went out to a sandy area, put a leaf in the ground, grabbed my wedge, and just tried to like recreate it, just haunted me. And ultimately, I felt like I wasn't going to be able to sleep at night. And it felt like the right thing to do to err on the side of caution. And I called the PGA Tour and I was disqualified. And so that set in motion. Now I've got no status. I'm getting married. And we're now going to go off on this adventure. And what I haven't talked about a lot and where I just want to highlight now, so one pivot point in my career is winning the Future Masters, and then shortly thereafter winning the Boys State Junior in Florida. That's a big, big moment. Then going to a D1 school, it's a big moment. And then this thing right here is my professional career is going, shaped every single part of the next 10 to 11 years of my life. Because what it did, and I didn't know this at the time, but my anxiety was exposed a little bit through the health stuff when I was 16 or 17. And then this just poured gasoline on this spark that was in me of, you could call it OCD, you could call it performance anxiety, you could call it generalized anxiety, whatever. But both realms of it, both personally with my health and then professionally with my golf, just ramped up to 1,000,000. And I don't think I had a tournament or even almost a full round the entirety of my PGA Tour career where I was not worried I was going to make a mistake or have an oversight or something was going to go wrong, and then I was going to find out about it later, and it was going to have this crazy detrimental effect on my life and my career. I was scared I was going to go win a tournament, make over $1,000,000, and then 2 weeks later find out oh, well, you didn't take this drop right, and then now I've spent some money, but I got to give the money back, and they're going to take the trophy back, and it just these irrational and overwhelming fears just permeated all of me for years. And it started right there on the 4th hole at Callaway Gardens at Q School. And so one thread that I can't miss through this whole story is that I'm a Christian. Jesus saved me when I was about 12, I believe. He used my amazing family, David and Terry Barber, to introduce me to the faith. And some people's story is wild and chaotic, and they get in drugs and sexual addiction and partying and running far from God, and then the Lord saves them. My story is that I was born a sinner, as we all are, and he put me into David and Terry Barber's family, and they took me to church, and they preached the gospel to me, and they raised me to think critically and logically, and to ask questions and to seek answers, and God used that to save me. And so I can't divorce my Christian worldview and the Lord's guidance of my life from all these situational things that are happening, because I can see very clearly, sitting now here today at 35, how that radically transformed my heart and my mind over the decade of playing professional golf. That if I had my choice, I would have never had happen to me, because it was brutal. And big parts of me wish I could still go back and play to the level of physical aptitude that I possessed, with the clarity of mind and peace of heart that I now have as a 35-year-old. But if I hadn't walked through all that, I wouldn't be here today as a 35-year-old. So that just set in motion this thing in me that really wouldn't pop up until about a year later. But what happened in the immediate aftermath of that is I go out to California as a newlywed, and I Monday qualify into my first PGA Tour event. So I've got no status. I got nowhere to play. I've got to go do mini tour stuff if I want any consistency of playing. We go to Southern California. I play the pre-qualifier, shoot 66, play the Monday qualifier and shoot 65, and I win it. And I get into the Genesis, what's now the Genesis Invitational at Riviera. And so my first ever PGA Tour event is one of the best PGA Tour events. It's my favorite golf course competitively that I've ever played. I love just everything about it's wonderful. So my first entryway post Q school in February of the following year, so about 3 months later, is playing my first PGA Tour event at Riviera. I made the cut, had a great week, and then we just keep going into the rest of this year. I get a sponsor's invite, 2 sponsors invites. No, hold on, let me do the, I get a sponsor's invite into a web.com event in Pittsburgh later in the summer. So we fly up there, game's feeling good. I'm playing mini tour events. I think I either won one or lost in a playoff in the summer. I played another PGA Tour event where I got a sponsor invite into Puerto Rico, and I was next to last group on Sunday. It's the one that Jordan Spieth won and sort of took off on his career in 13. But I was in the next to last group, one group ahead of Spieth, and I was in third going into the final round. And then back to that thread earlier of playing for money and what it means if you do certain things and all this. I just got overwhelmed and I played poorly. Shot 76 final round and finished like 25th. So we get to Pittsburgh and I am solo second after 36 holes. Playing great. Fun little golf course, kind of quirky. We go to the scoring tent. I check my score, sign my card. My caddy double checks. He's like, yep, looks good. Score looks it over. He's like, yep, looks good. I go back to the putting green to putt. We look at the leaderboard. I'm solo second. Great position for the weekend. Now, if I could win a tournament, not only is it monetarily beneficial, but now I could get status too. I could move myself into the season of the Korn Ferry, of the web.com season. And about 10 minutes later, an official comes out and he taps me on the shoulder. He's like, hey, come here. We need to talk about something. And he pulls my card out, and I had basically done the addition wrong, and I had a hole score that was less than what I made on the hole, which means I got disqualified. Now, you can pick apart the silly rules of the game. Some of these things have now been changed and altered over time, but I got disqualified. So this is June or July of 2013. So it's like, I'm looking it up right now on my computer. It's not too far after Q school. So Q school happens in October probably of 2012. Now we're the next year. It was a little bit later. It was August. So it was later in the season, but, I shot 67 the first round, then shot something 66, 67 the second round to be solo second, and I got disqualified. So now, like, this could literally be another life-changing week, and a scorecard error that I missed, my caddy missed, and the scorer missed caused me to be disqualified. I remember I just cried for hours. I was so devastated. So then, fast forward to 2014. So I get through Q school in 13 out in La Quinta at PGA West. But, so this is now two DQs into my professional career. Q school, the Milan Classic in Pittsburgh. I get out to Q school in La Quinta, and I breeze my way through. I mean, it's a challenge. 6 rounds still at the time. Back and forth between the Nicklaus and the stadium course. But the whole time, there's just this thing in my head of like, you're going to do something wrong. So now, new fears start popping into my mind. Did that ball move in the rough? Like when I set my wedge down behind it, kind of oscillated, but the rough's, dense Bermuda. Did the ball move? When I was on the putting green, the wind's blowing and my putter kind of barely tapped my ball. Did the ball move? So now like the ball moving becomes this new theme in my golf life. So I get through Q school. And I basically spend the off time between Q school and our first event, which would have been in Bogota, Colombia, to start the 2014 web.com season, just feeling like I don't deserve to be a member of the web.com tour. I mean, it was a spiritual wrestle. It was a mental wrestle. I'd go practice and I'd come home crying to Morgan and be like, am I ever going to play golf and not make a mistake? I just want to go play. Like, I just want to do this thing I love and not worry about these rules, incidents. It just turned into this just daily wrestle. I remember walking out the door of our apartment to get into our vehicle to go to the airport to fly to Columbia, just feeling like just a fake. I felt like I don't deserve this. I haven't earned this. That ball did move on whatever hole at Q school in the rough and you didn't call it. And so you shouldn't even be here. Just this like mega weight that I didn't need to bear, but it just felt so real. So we start that season. We play the South America swing as kind of the beginning part of the year. And actually, this just came to my mind when we were in Chile, Santiago, Chile. I moved my ball on a green, I can't remember exactly what happened. The ball moved, but it wasn't my fault, or it was my fault. And I basically did the inverse of what I should have done. So I asked my playing partners, I was like, hey, do I move this back? Do I leave it here? Whatever. I misapplied it, got docked a 2-shot penalty. We talked about it before the round was over, but it was like just another stupid mistake. And I think I finished 12th that week, and that would have made me finish 8th or 7th. And now at this point, I'm like trying to get my tour card because I'm a full member of the tour. So it's just another little just thorn in my side, just another little thing to just bother me, another pebble in my shoe in a negative way. About a week later, we go to Brazil. We're in Sao Paulo, Brazil. I shoot 67 the first day. Look that up. I think it was 67. And now, so I've had all these rules incidents, right? Oh yeah, it was the very next week. We went from Santiago to Brazil. So that happens in Santiago. We get to Brazil. I shoot 67. We get to the scores tent, and it's this sweet Brazilian girl who speaks no English. She's probably, as I can recall, she was young, 14, 15, 16 in high school. I was playing with Jose de Jesus Rodriguez, who is a Mexican golfer. He speaks no English, and he has messed up like 4 of my hole scores. So now in my head, the Milan class is coming back to me. I'm like, I've got to get these hole scores right. Like, I'm feeling so much pressure and stress. What is going on? I fixed the hole scores. I start fixing it was 4 to 5 mess ups, which isn't a huge deal. Like, Jose may not have been paying attention, or not his fault at all. We can fix it. So I bring Chris, my caddy, in. We start fixing all these hole scores, and I get them all done. Looks right. They confirm it. I confirm it. Chris confirms it. Jose confirms it. And I turn the card in. Go up. I like kind of sigh of relief. Go upstairs, and start eating lunch, and just feel a little bit lighter. I'm like, man, this stuff has got to stop happening. About 10 minutes later, one of my good friends, who's a rules official, Hal, walks over to me, taps me on the shoulder, and he's like, hey, come here, we need to talk about something. So I walk over into the other room, and I remember to this day Hal was holding my scorecard in between both hands, and I could see him shaking. I don't know if he was jittery or if it was the circumstance, but I remember that, and I was pretty calm, and he looked at me, and he's like, did you sign the card? Is this initial here to just confirm a hole change, or did you sign the card? Because in golf, maybe silly, but it's a rule. If you don't physically sign the scorecard, then that's also disqualification. And because there were so many mess ups, my mind immediately went to what had happened at the Milan. I started fixing all of those, and I just completely forgot to sign my card. And I was like, no, that was an initial for the hole. I forgot to sign. And he's like, well, that's a disqualification. So now this is the third one in 18 months, all different scenarios, all just unforeseen circumstances. I feel like an idiot. My wife's devastated for me. We're now in Brazil, 3 hours from the airport to go catch a 12-hour red eye back to Atlanta. I'm going to make no money. This is expensive. I'm flying 10-hour flights down to South America. And it was just like, this stuff has to stop happening. What in the world is going on? And so over 10 years down the road, I can look back at those things and see very clearly how just this obsessive compulsiveness of the rules and my responsibility and all this stuff just turned into a monster inside of me. And then what happened was, because I felt like I couldn't control that on the golf course, it reared its head in my personal life with just generalized anxiety, constantly questioning my physical health, regular panic attacks. And I just had this lens of fear in my life, regardless of where I turned. It made me not want to be alone. If my mind was quiet and I was alone with my own thoughts, all those things would just ramp up to 1,000,000. So I hated traveling by myself. I had a hard time getting on airplanes to go to tournaments by myself. I ended up getting my tour card that year. I finished top 5 on the money list, and that got me to the PGA Tour. And I would be eligible to play in and skip PGA Tour events because I couldn't handle the thought of being on an airplane by myself. Like if it was a week when Morgan and the kids, or before we had kids, Morgan, or once we had them, Morgan and the kids, or if my caddy couldn't stay with me, I couldn't stand the thought of like traveling alone, getting in a rental car alone, being in a hotel alone. I just couldn't do it. And so if I couldn't work out the logistics of having someone stay with me or travel with me or be with me, I just not play. So like I didn't, and this is funny, they had no ill intent in this or know why, but I used to just not play the international events outside the United States because of those factors. And then being in a foreign country and the unknown of that and the uncomfortability of that just made it even worse. And so I would just not play a lot of events. And I remember guys used to give me a hard time about it. I'd be like, oh, Blayne only plays the domestic events, not knowing just the inner angst and turmoil that was going on inside of me. And in all of it, I just felt so stupid. I felt so alone. I felt like I'm supposed to be out here, one of the best players in the world on the PGA Tour. I've started to kind of have some chances to get into contention and play well. And I'm one of the new guys. And like, I can't even focus on practicing because I'm so worried about finishing these drills and then going to spend the afternoon by myself at the hotel. Or I'm on the 14th hole and I need to take a drop, and it's a basic drop. It's close nearest point, 1 club length, free drop it, blah, blah, blah. But like, I got to where I would call an official every single time I had a basic question. And I know it was probably annoying to them. And I know it probably affected pace of play. And so then I'm now worried about affecting my playing partners and staying up with the group ahead of us. And my mind is everywhere except present on the shot at hand. And so honestly, I look back at the fact I played 4 years on the PGA Tour consecutively, which I'm really grateful for. Is I feel like my golf career did not go the way that I had hoped it would. But to have played 4 years in a row on the PGA Tour with the stuff in my head that was going on is a testament to God's grace and kindness to me, to allow the dreams of a little 7, 8-year-old boy to come true and to experience that and to have amazing memories. And then also, I so firmly believe this. I think that God allowed those 4 years of success to give me enough buffer to then go out and just struggle for years. I'm now 7 years removed from playing on the PGA Tour. 5 of those were like very lackluster, unsuccessful years on the Korn Ferry Tour, where I have spent so much more money than I've made. And I see it as just like a whisper of God's grace in my life that he gave me excess for 4 so that I could go out and really wrestle and deal with a lot of this heart stuff and this mind and soul stuff after that. And so as I got on the PGA Tour, that was kind of the daily struggle I'm going through. Like, it manifested itself in outbursts on the course, terrible language directed at me under my breath, sometimes audibly, things that I would never, ever, ever say about me in a serious moment or believe about me. Breaking clubs, throwing clubs. There was also this disconnect. Like, I hated the fact that I believe in the gospel. God has saved me. I'm seeing some fruit in my personal life, but then I'm just like this totally other person on the golf course. I can't get control over my anxiety in my head off the course, so I go to the course and I can kind of control this thing. So I'm going to do my best to manufacture this fake control over here. And I couldn't do it there. And so it was just this explosion of anger and rage and fakeness. And it always made me feel like a phony. And it's really made me have to go back to a lot of relationships that were long suffering with me and patient with me and tried to call me out in my crap, but I wouldn't listen. Caddies, coaches, mental coaches, swing coaches. I've just had to be like, I'm really sorry for who I was as a professional golfer. I was just so out of sorts and strung up in my head that I couldn't ever quite be who I wanted to be as a professional and as a golfer and as an athlete. And it was just really difficult. And one thing I still wrestle with to this day, sitting here at 35, is I felt like God was going to allow me to regain it and do it with a different perspective and a different outlook and a more obedient heart and a more trusting heart. And I was going to go out and like actually enjoy it for what it was. Like, actually go out and walk in thankfulness and peace and joy. Romans chapter 8 says that the mind that is set on the flesh is hostile to God, but the mind that is set on the spirit is life and peace. I don't think I said that exactly correctly, but if we walk in the spirit, there's life and peace available to us. And I really felt like my journey on the Korn Ferry Tour from 2019 to 2023, I was going to have that opportunity, and I never did. I never quite put the physical side back with the mental side, and kind of created other interests. As I uncovered a new level of fitness and a passion there, my body kind of changed, and so my swing changed, and so that created some things. And I say all this to say that it's the journey from point A to point B in life is just often not linear. I wish it was, and I could sit in regret, but as a Christian, there's this beautiful character trait of God that you see all throughout the Bible, that is his sovereignty and his providence in our lives. Sometimes those providences are painful, but they're always for his glory and for our good if you trust in him. And I never quite unearthed what I felt like my potential was as a golfer. But I really think that if I would have in that moment of life, there's just no telling to what extent my anxiety would have gone to, or how self-focused and narcissistic I would have become. I don't think I could have handled it. And so I do view it as just a governor on what Blayne could have become. And in a lot of ways, I'm grateful that I wasn't allowed to do that. And so in 2018, which was my last year, looking back, that was my last year on the PGA Tour. The kind of last pivot point I'll talk about was Friday afternoon in Hawaii, in Honolulu at the Sony Open. I got up enough nerve to go play that event, which was a whole ordeal internally just over the months leading up. Like, I got to get on a flight. We're going to take off from LA. We're going to be over the ocean for 6 hours. Just like all these irrational fears. I guess founded fears, but like things that I struggle with more than some people, I guess. I felt like a big boy doing it, which sounds so stupid, but it was a win to just go play the tournament. So I make the cut. And Friday night, my caddy, Corey Gilmer, goes down to have some drinks with some friends in Honolulu. And me and my brother, which thank God Shane was there. He came literally just to hang out and go to Hawaii for the first time, which I am so thankful for. We felt like it was on a whim, but clearly it was the Lord knowing that I was going to need Shane there. So Shane and I are in the hotel, and I get a phone call that says, hey, Corey has collapsed and is unconscious at so-and-so. I don't remember exactly what the restaurant was or the open area. So we throw our shoes on, run down there, and Corey's unconscious. And long story short, this was on Friday, so I had to play the next morning. I spent most of the night at the hospital in the ER. He was unconscious, and he ended up being in a coma for 7 weeks in Honolulu before he was able to be transferred to a rehab facility in Nashville where he was living at the time. So Friday night, my worst fear for myself happens to one of my best friends. Some medical event, place far from home. If we wouldn't ever flown here, this wouldn't have happened here, blah, blah, blah. So my greatest fear is exposed. Like, something bad could happen to me anywhere I'm at. It's a reality, but I don't need to live in fear of that. But it's now happened to my best friend, which ultimately just kind of is like this, leads to a deeper fear of death for me. Not that at the time it was probably a little bit different spiritually. I wasn't as far along in God's wooing of me closer and closer to himself at 28 as I am at 35, but more of just the unknown. Like, there is a day when I will cease to exist on earth. I will die, and I don't know when that is. So that was kind of the underlying fear of the hypochondriac type fears that I had. The next morning, we wake up. I barely slept because I spent the majority of the night at the hospital. And then any of my friends who played this event will know this. It kind of became a news story. There was a false missile alert sent out over the emergency broadcast system. We get a text that says, ballistic missile inbound for Hawaii. Please seek shelter immediately. This is not a drill. And I spent the next 45 minutes in a basement floor of the Queen Mary Hospital, I can't remember, in Honolulu, thinking that this was it. My best friend had this incident the night before. Now I'm about to die. And I was on the phone with Morgan, just basically saying goodbye. We had a 3-year-old, 2.5-year-old, and a 6-month-old at the time. And tensions were high with North Korea. And we thought that this was a legitimate thing. And so I came to terms with it. We talked, we were praying. She was trying to find news on her end. And long story short, it was a mistake. Button wasn't meant to be pushed. And we ended up playing that day. I played with JJ Spawn in twosomes on Saturday at the Sony. And I have never been more in an out-of-body experience in a round of golf in my entire life. I was just like a complete zombie. How my body felt, how my mind felt, it was trippy. And that 12-hour period really changed the course of my life, because then a week or two later, some dear friends of ours, we were staying in a house together for the Waste Management Phoenix Open. And we were talking one night, and the wife started saying how she struggled with anxiety, and she had these crazy, random, irrational thoughts when her heart rate would increase, or when she felt a certain way, or when she was alone. And then we started talking with some other people, and they like wrestled with, at times, like, did that ball move in the rough when I was on 7? Like, talking to their caddy, did you see that? And they go home and talk to their wife. And then our friends also mentioned, like, yeah, I started, because of the anxiety, I started doing some counseling, doing some therapy sessions, and then I actually started taking this medication, and it really, you start taking it, you're like, there's no way this does anything, and it kind of like just reset my brain, and like, it's not as much of a struggle anymore. It pops up, but I kind of feel equipped to fight it. And for the first time in February of 2018, my caddy is still in a coma in Hawaii. All these things are still just at full rev mode in my mind and in my heart. And for the first time, in the midst of like proverbial just complete darkness, like, this is literally going to be my lot for the rest of my life, I just saw the most faint glimmer of light. Like I was in a tunnel, but there was a way out. And then the rest of 2018 was sort of the transitional period of my life. I started doing some Christian counseling with a amazing group here in Auburn. I talked to my doctor, explained a lot of the stuff that was going on. And he's like, oh yeah, we'll put you on this, like, low dosage of this thing, do it and see what happens. Started letting more people into it, talking to more people. And the Lord completely turned the anxious part of my life upside down. The habits and rhythms that I'd gotten into on the golf course with my self-talk, my language outwardly, my reaction to negativity or difficulty, adversity, that's the word I'm looking for, took years to break. Really, it kind of, I felt like took all the way up until the end of stopping to play. I got to where I just had these little wins where I would go a full 18 holes with a calm mind and a calm heart, no outbursts, steady emotional state. And I would shoot 76 and just be absolutely elated. And it really let me into like, man, I wish I could have just played like this on the PGA Tour. Like, this is how I need to play. And then if I can just get my physicality to catch up to where I'm at emotionally and mentally, this could be deadly in the best way possible. And it never quite happened. But that 12-hour period in Hawaii, and actually, let me rewind quickly. Morgan and I went on a date right before I went to Hawaii, because I was going to go to Hawaii by myself with Corey and Shane. And then her and the kids were going to meet me in Palm Springs for the Humana, which was the following week. So we went on a date right before I left for a week. And we were like, we hadn't done this up until this point. We'd prayed for each other. We're good communicators. We're like always letting each other into our lives and our hearts and our junk. But we went to this coffee shop in downtown Auburn, and I was like, let's write down some specific prayer requests, and I'll pray for you and you pray for me, and let's kind of be intentional about this. And one of the ones I wrote down, it's in a journal somewhere in my office, was fulfillment in work, like letting it just hold its proper place, and then relief and freedom from my anxiety. And then, as my counselor said a few weeks later, when I made the connection and met with him after talking to the friends and after this event had happened in Hawaii, he just kind of off the cuff, but so eloquently said, God finally said, all right, Blayne, it's time to heal this. And he did. And so then I spent 2019, I had a decent year, started playing better the latter half of the year, had a chance to win at a tournament in New York, and then made it to the Korn Ferry finals. And the final round in Evansville, Indiana at Victoria National was my chance to get back to the PGA Tour 1 year after I lost my card. So I did the Korn Ferry finals the previous year, played poorly. I was just kind of in a bad place. I was still sort of reinventing and I don't like that word. I was sort of still growing through those transitional stages in my life and kind of settled in. And then in 19, we were designing a house. Our family was growing. We were in the adoption process. And I really wanted to be back on the PGA Tour because I realized how different life and your standard of living and your ability to move about freely in the world and make financial decisions, the difference it was between the PGA and the Korn Ferry Tour. And so I get to Evansville, and basically I needed a 13th place finish or better, maybe 12th place, to get back to the PGA Tour. Go into Sunday in 6th or 7th place in great position. It's the most nervous I've ever been, the most anxious and excited I've ever been for a round of golf in my whole career. Just visceral, I can do it. This is 1 year from losing my card. I can get back to the PGA Tour. And I just spent the whole morning, I was journaling, taking notes, praying, working out, listening to music, just trying to be distracted in good ways. And I get out there and I just played like a robot for the first 13 holes. I think I was 4 under through 13. I was in a great spot, cruising. And then I just remember I had a sloppy 3-putt, missed a 2-footer on 14. On 16, I kind of wiped a 9-iron right, left a difficult bunker shot, missed a putt. And then on 17, difficult hole, hit a 6-iron left the green, chipped it to about 4 feet, and I had hit the exact same 4-footer in my practice round. I remember lining the putt up being like, man, it's not often that you hit the exact putt in practice that you're going to have in the tournament. And so I knew the read. It was just, I was very calm and confident in that moment because of what had happened. And I hit a great putt, and in practice round, it turned. In the round, it did not turn, just stayed on the right edge, tapped in for bogey, parred the last hole, looked up at the board, and I had missed getting my card back by 1 shot, bogeying 3 of the last 5 holes. And I had driven to Evansville, which is about 7 or 8 hours from Auburn. And that was just a really, really difficult 7 or 8 hour drive. Very at peace with the effort I'd put forth. Very at peace with knowing that this journey is filled with ups and downs. But man, that was difficult. But it left me with a lot of hope because I was like, if I could have played this year the way I did, it wasn't that great. It definitely didn't feel like my best stuff. But if I could go the whole year and just 1 shot is all I came up short, surely that's the worst it can possibly get. And little did I know you can play way worse than that for years after. So off season comes, we commit to moving our family, building a house, kind of staking out where we want to be long-term in Auburn. And then COVID happens, and that threw a wrench in my game. And then the next 3 years just did not go as I wanted them to. I lost my card on the Korn Ferry 1 year, went back to Q school, got it right back. And throughout this last phase of my career, these last 3 or 4 years, and me and a lot of my close friends that I would travel, I had such great friends. We would travel together, stay together, rent houses together. It was such a joy. And a lot of those guys are still playing, and I love rooting them on from a distance. But there was so much, I had so much fun. And I still had days where I had to apologize to my caddy, Wyatt, shout out Wyatt, or Drew, shout out Drew. Any of the guys that sort of filled in throughout those times. I had lots of friends, and Jace and Shane and my dad. I was able to spend a lot of time with a lot of dear friends and family that would come out and caddy for me because I only had a full-time guy, Wyatt, for a couple of those years. And there was a lot of really, really crappy golf and deep moments of just not knowing where to go with my game, and just still having so much fun and just enjoying the grind and trying to figure it out and exploring new things and trying different equipment. And it just showed me that all the shiny, fancy, cool stuff and the trophies in their proper place can be really sweet gifts, and you can enjoy them. But like, I wouldn't trade any of that for freedom from all these wrestles that I had throughout my professional career with personal and professional anxiety, and just some of those dark periods that I walked through. And so, kind of getting close to the close here, it's amazing. I have had so many conversations with guys. I've had some college guys get connected to me and reach out. And then I've also had lots of conversations with people that you would recognize their name and play regularly on the PGA Tour that struggle with some of the same stuff, and you would never know it. And, man, I concocted and created all kinds of new rules-related anxieties throughout my career. I would, hit a bad shot and kind of hit my foot, not hard enough to do anything, but just kind of hit your foot. And then now I'm worried like I bent the shaft. So now the club's non-conforming and it's illegal. Or I would get up to the green to mark my bunker shot to get out of the way of the next guy to hit and like put the mark down standing above the ball. But then when I got down, bent behind the ball to line it up, like now my visual vantage point has changed. So now the mark doesn't look like as close to the ball as it did. And now the ball won't stay in the same spot. So it's like, am I replacing this ball where it's supposed to be? Just so many different things. And it was exhausting. And so having walked through it, having come out on the other side of it, now being able to see it for what it is, knowing when to say, like, yeah, you probably should just follow your conscience there and call that out, versus, dude, you're totally fine. I've wrestled with the same thing. You need to just let it go and trust that other people are struggling with the same thing. And like, you're good. I've had so many of those conversations, and it's so fun to say, keep pushing along, let me carry your burdens for you. Like every time you feel that, if it's legitimate, you're going to deal with it in the moment, because I know that you're an honest guy, and people that don't struggle with these things don't call and ask these questions. Just give me your burdens. Like I can handle it. I want you to go out and play free golf and enjoy this thing that you're good at and that God has called you to do. And so like, let me carry the burden, because it's not as big as it feels to you in the moment. And that's having come from a place where it's felt very big. So it's been really fun it's just been a joy it's not fun because I don't want these dear friends of mine and these college guys to wrestle with these same things, but to having been shown compassion and brought through it, and then be able to turn around and give that back, as 2 Corinthians talks about, that God is the God of all comfort, and he comforts us in our affliction so that we can then turn around and comfort those who are walking through affliction. And that means spiritual or just life stuff or tragedy or triumph. Like, we can just be a help to one another. So here we are. Now I feel like the freedom of the stress being gone. I feel like I swing it about as good as I ever have. My short game is definitely the best it's ever been. my putting is sharp and I hit it further than I ever have. And the only outlet I have to use that is for fun and recreation and the occasional club event. And that's okay. It ultimately just got to a point where professional golf is amazing. If I could do anything tomorrow, no added outside context, I would play professional golf. It's what I want to do. It's what I feel the best at, what I feel the most gifted at, what I love doing. But that life also involves lots of weeks on the road throughout the year, family separation. It's high stress. The highs are high, the lows are low, even when handled appropriately. And so for our family, it just doesn't make sense. We just got to the point where we said, we're going to prioritize other things and us being together. And so that's what ultimately led us to be where we are, and for me to shift gears and to go into a different phase and season of my life. But I just want to end by saying I am so grateful. One of my biggest points of gratitude in my golf journey is I really started to hate golf in my 20s when I was on the PGA Tour, making the most money I've ever made, having the best experiences that I possibly could as a golfer. And it had nothing to do with any of that. It was just, I was holding it too tightly, and I just needed to relent and really let the Lord do things in me that I just wasn't willing to submit to at that point. And in his mercy and compassion, he started to do those things in me a little bit later. But now I've experienced the first half of my career was very successful, and it was mostly just upward trajectory all the way until 2016 or 17. And then the second half of my career was mostly just a downward spiral to a explosion at the bottom. But I left, and I love this game. I want my kids to play it. I love going out and playing with my buddies. I love competing. I played in an inter-club match a couple weeks ago, and it was the first time I'd played something that meant something in a while, and it just was so fun. I marked my golf balls the night before. I scrubbed my grips. I cleaned my clubs. I just got everything ready, and it just made me realize all the things that I love about golf. And so to be, for the back half of my career, to be as pathetic as it was results-wise, to have enjoyed the striving for it and the potential of getting back, and then now to just love it and to be able to go play for fun. And if I shoot 77, put my clubs in the car and go home and have a great evening with my family is just such a gift. And so I still love it. And it was an amazing ride, and I'm hopeful to help anyone who wants to embark on that journey just through experiential conversations, things that I've walked through and experienced, or any way I can help anyone. I love to do that. I love to see the ambition in a 12-year-old who wants to play on the PGA Tour. And the beauty of golf is that if you go out and shoot the scores, you can do it. So it was a fun ride. And I can't believe I've sat here and talked by myself for an hour and 48 minutes. But if you've made it this long, I'm really grateful. And I hope there's something in my journey and my story that's able to be applied in your life. Hey guys, this is Blayne, one of the hosts here at Entrusted. We are really grateful you chose to spend some time with us today. We know you have lots of options, and we hope that the thoughts and the messages from this talk we had with our guests really propelled you to explore the design that you were created for. The best ways to support us: check out our socials, like, subscribe, leave a review, tell your friends, family, coworkers, neighbors. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we hope you'll tune back in next time.